All right, guys. Nice to meet you. My name is David. I'm an appraiser. I own an appraisal company. I've been doing it for 20 years. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go over kind of just like a lot of the appraisal process, some things to look for as an agent when you're getting ready to go through an appraisal. And a lot of this information will be able to help you guys with your listings and just kind of how to price them, how to place bids on them, and things like that. So we're just going to jump into it. I'm going to read off of a PowerPoint that I have and then also work through some of the sites that I use. And I'll show you guys some of the tools that we use as an appraiser so that you guys can um, use those as well. And if there's a question that you guys have or anything like that, just feel free to let me know and we'll jump in on that. Okay. All right. So the first thing that I do when somebody calls me about a property. I'm also a realtor, by the way. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. When somebody calls me in reference to a property, and they want to get appraised or they're interested in me selling it for them, the first thing I need to know is obviously like what the property is. And the site that I usually go to figure that out is Miami-Dade.gov. Well, the property appraiser's website in Miami-Dade County would be Miami-Dade.gov. In Broward County would be bcpa.org. Palm Beach has their own, Monroe has their own, so it depends on where you're at. But I would go to the property appraiser's website, which is the one that I'm on right now on the screen, and I would type in a property. So just to give you an example. Somebody called me, asked me to raise this out, let's say, go put the address in and go here, right? This site's gonna give me the most relevant information that I can look at on a quick, 5, 10 minutes, spend 5, 10 minutes looking at it, get myself acquainted with the property. On the left, you're gonna have some, obviously, I'm assuming that a lot of your realtors will know that, but I'm still gonna run through this really quick. On your left, you're gonna have a lot of, the owner, the mailing address, stuff like that. Once you get to this information here, which is where your square footage is, you need to be able to identify the difference between living area, actual area, and adjusted area. Okay, so living area is the area under air. Okay. Actual area is the area that the roof covers. So that would include the total porch, patio, garage area, all of that would be included in the actual area. And then adjusted area is the area that you are taxed on, okay, which is foot for foot for living area, 50% of garages and 30% of porches and patios. If it's a carport, it would be fall under porch and patio. It's got to be an enclosed garage to count as 50%. So most of the time, when in regards to adjusted area, you don't really have to worry about that. That's more square footage that the county worked with to get a amount that they multiply that square footage times the price per foot to come up with an amount to tax you or tax the owner. But so that's there. Year built also pretty important. Living in South Florida, we have different types of materials that are used in construction. The 60 is you know could be a red flag for cast iron pipes, stuff like that. So I always look at the year built. It also is going to have some type of influence when we go to our comp selection, right? What type of houses we pick to be comparable. So this is where I would go, to get as much information. You get the assessed values. You have a lot of links here with regards to like what the tax bill. There's a comp sales tool that they use. That's not the one that I use, but I mean, there's a lot of resources here that I find specifically to get to know my subject property. Once I am familiar with my subject property, then I'm going to go to the MLS to look for comps. But this is where I would go first, right? One of the tools that I use a lot is this sketch that the county has for anything that's detached, single family. The county should have a sketch that looks like that of the property. It doesn't always have it. There are some properties in Dade County that you will not find this. Um, but I would say probably a good 80% at least should have that. So I always do try to find that. And by the way, Broward County has a similar tool, and so does Palm Beach Property Appraiser. Monroe County, I'm not sure. So this is where I would go to find a sketch of the property. When I go to do an appraisal, I always print this page specifically, the sketch, and I take that sketch with me to the inspection when I go to see the house. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to identify if there's any illegal additions or maybe a garage that was converted without a permit, anything like that. I want to confirm on site. I also want to make sure that what the county has with regards to living area is accurate. So when I'm at the house, I'm going to be measuring it, right? When you've done an appraisal before, you see that the appraiser walks around with a wheel or a laser. He's measuring the structure. Um, so this is what I take out with me to confirm that. This is one of the biggest tools that I use from property appraisers website, and I suggest that you guys get familiar with it and incorporate it into your work as much as you're able to. Um, okay. Once we're good with our subject, once we have a good, we spent 5-10 minutes getting to know. I'm going to point something out before I move on as well. There is a map of an aerial photo of the house that shows the layout, right? And you can also mess with the zoom. And one of the reasons I bring this up is because if you're zoomed in here, you're not going to know what is directly west of this property. If you zoom out, you're going to see that this is the expressway. That may or may not have an impact on value. You'd have to determine that based on comparable sales data. But this is another feature that I would use to get myself familiar with like where are we, what is next to us that could or could not have an impact on value. Um, okay, so once I have a good idea of what my subject looks like, I already know my bed bath count, at least what the county has as a bed bath count. The square footage, I looked at the sketch, I looked at the map, I know where I'm at. Now I would go into Matrix. And the first thing I would do is put the property address in on the search tool and see what comes up, right? Because that's going to tell me, okay, the property's been rented 3 times, right? Now I can get some interior photos. This one only has one photo. This one has 24 photos, right? So I can look through this, right? This is the first thing I'm doing. I'm still not looking at comps. I'm just getting um accustomed to what the structure is, what we have. I see that the lot is really big. I may not have noticed that on the property appraiser's website, but as you can tell, the lot goes way out there. Um, and just what I'm really getting familiar with here is like what condition are we in? How long has this been since this house has been updated, more or less? Based on the pictures, I would say this house is probably 20 years or so since it's been updated. 15 to 20 years is kind of in the realm of when those finishes are from. Okay, now that I have that, if it was a listing, if I was trying to get the listing, if I'm trying to make an offer, I would obviously also look at like the property history to see like, was the property recently offered? Did it expire? What's going on with the listing history? Once I'm familiar with all of that, then I will go into the search of single family homes. I will go to the map function. We'll type in the address of the property, right? Okay. And this is where we're going to start searching for comps, right? So a lot of people like to use this radius search, and they'll just come here to where the subject is and pull it out a mile, right? That would be what they would consider quality search. However, if you're familiar with this area, you're going to see that this is Miami Lakes up here in the northeast quadrant of the circle. And this is the south, this part over here is Hialeah. Okay. This neighborhood and this neighborhood are not similar at all. Okay. This neighborhood over here could be similar in some cases, but this, which is the Palmetto, is a major boundary. Okay. So appraisers are going to want to always work within their boundaries. It doesn't mean that they won't come over here for a comp, but this is where you would want to first settle in with regards to your search. This area down here, this is an industrial area. Okay, there's warehouses and stuff down here. So the reason I point that out is because a radius search is not really the way that I would consider, what to do first. What I would like to do is there's a function that says draw polygon, and I would like to go around the major boundaries, right? So this is the Gratney, at the very bottom end of the screen is the Gratney. 67th Avenue is a major boundary as well. It's a major avenue. And 154th Street, it divides this corridor, right? So initially, this is the exact same in here, this pocket of this corner here. Now, this pocket over here, this pocket over here, and this pocket over here also have very similar properties. But I want to know what's very similar in here first. Okay, so we're gonna go closed sale. We're gonna look at everything: active, closed sales, pendings, only single family properties. Okay. We don't need to look at since mine is a single family, I don't have a need to consider townhomes or condos or anything else that's in there at the same time. Okay. Right here. I always look back 365. I do prioritize anything that's more recent, but 12 months back is a good indicator of where things are. Okay, as you can see, we have approximately 17 houses on the market there. Okay. One of the things that I suggest, if you're working in a neighborhood that you don't typically visit, it's not a neighborhood that you farm, it's not a neighborhood that you've lived in before, it's not a neighborhood that you've worked in before. I recommend before you relay a lot of information to your client that you familiarize yourself with the neighborhood. Okay. You could do this search doesn't need to be done after the fact, but even with this search, I would print out a list of homes that you're considering to be comparable, and you should go out to the neighborhood and get yourself familiar with, what again could be an impact. Your house may face a church, it may face a school, it may back up to a park. You may be on a motorized lake or non-motorized lake. Like, these are all things that will have impact. And if you don't know that neighborhood, you don't farm that neighborhood, it's going to be very hard to get that information just from a map view or an overhead view of the neighborhood. So I do recommend that you go out there, you drive, to your subject, drive a couple blocks around there, go drive some of the comps that you shoot, and familiarize yourself well with the property before you talk in detail with the possible client. Okay, so I've done half of the search, right? I've already kind of set the boundaries for the search. I'm gonna go really quickly back to right, go back to that go for that. Where? Here we go. Property search. Okay, so I wanted to come back here because now that I have the quadrant of where I'm going to look for sales, I want to get some important features on my house, right? So my house at 5'3", it's 2,200 square feet, and it's on an almost 20,000 square foot lot. Okay, there's a canal there. Okay, but it's not lake, which there's a lot of lakes here, right? So just to give you a brief, there's a lot of this water frontage here on the lake is going to be superior to the water frontage that the subject is on in the canal. So I would hope to find at least one that's on a similar canal and not compared to all waterfront sales on the lake. Okay. So 2,300 square feet, 20,000 square foot lot, 5'3", right? We already had an idea of what it looked like. It looked like it had been adjusted before. Okay, so I have one 5'3" model here that's sold. Okay. I'm also on Sable Drive. right? That's the address of the property. So I want to look at that. Okay. There's another one here on Sable Drive. Want to look at that. Okay. We have a big lot, which there's two sales here with big lots, and that I'm already liking. I already have that. There's some waterfront sales and there's some dry lot sales. So right now with those three, I'm starting to favor those. Okay. This is the top end of the market. So I'm gonna take a brief search at like what 135 is. Okay. 135 is a property that condition wise is pretty similar to our house. There's a big gap on this house, and I believe that it is the lot, right? If you come over here, you're gonna see that this house has a 60,000 square foot lot, which is three times our lot. Um, so I would shy away from that from the get-go just because of how vastly different that is. A lot of the price into that property is because of that major lot. Okay. So then the other sale we have is 1.250, right? So I would obviously look at that as well. Very similar looking house to ours. Okay. In terms of like the design. Now you can see it's on the lake. Okay. And I'd like to see the finishes inside. They're obviously highlighting the outside of this property because I mean, it's center lake, a lot of amenities outside, the pool, the view. And then here's the inside of the home. The home, I would say, a little bit superior in terms of condition to the other house. Although these updates are not necessarily brand new, they do look to be a little bit superior with regards to the flooring, the kitchen, um, the bathroom's more or less the same condition. So we're not necessarily, we're not appraising it right at the moment. We're not saying, hey, we're going to adjust X amount for the condition, but that now would be like the top end, top end. And it's a large lot. It was a similar lot, 18,000 square feet, but on the lake. Okay. And that sold for 125. This sold for 1-1, which is also a large lot on the lake. A little bit inferior in condition to the one that we just saw, but probably more similar in condition to the one that we are looking at in regards to the appraisal. So the main significant difference between this house and ours is that this house is on a lake view. Okay, so then I would go to this one, which is on Sable. Okay, so this house, obviously I chose this property to look at. I know that I'm very familiar with this property, with our house. This is the best comp. Okay, the one that sold for 999. Why? Okay, this house is 5 houses away. This is the subject that we are appraising right here, where the mouse is over. This comp is on the same street, maybe 6 houses away. And it backs to the same canal, it backs to the same highway, and it has a large lot as well. Okay. So of everything that I've looked at so far, this would be the most comparable house to this one. Okay. This house also just closed. If you look at the listing, you're gonna see that this property closed in March of 2025. So that's also adding to the story that this is the best comp, right? So now that I know that this house is on the same street, 6 houses down, very similar in size, the lot size is pretty similar. It's 22,000. I think the other one was 19,000. The only thing that I really need to consider is the condition, and it looks very similar in condition to the one that we're appraising, right? It has been updated, but the updates are probably 15 to 20 years back. Okay. Let me see if it gives you a lake view, sorry, canal view, so you can see what the canal looks like. It's nothing special back there. Uh, um, that's the canal back there, back down, way down there. Um, So anyways, based on that, like I can already start getting to a ballpark that our house is worth $1 million, right? That's this sale just closed 999, very similar condition. It's a 4.3 or it's a 5.3, you know, it really works. This is also on sale for 950. Okay. This is a home that's been more updated or more recently updated. Still very still pretty similar in size. It is a 4.2, but here's the big difference in this house and ours. This house has an 8,000 square foot lot. We have a 20,000 square foot lot. So we would like to hover with comps in this square foot lot size than we would in this. Okay, because it's a bigger part of the price of the home. Okay. With that, we kind of went over, the time frame of the sale, the location, the condition, these are things that we're going to look at from an appraiser standpoint, and that we're going to look at from as an agent as well, with regards to, trying to find a comp, trying to price it out. Um, that's where we will see. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, you want to verify that the living area for the home and the lot size registered for the home are accurate. The lot size you can verify with a survey, maybe an old survey. You don't necessarily have to get a survey done. A lot of times owners have a survey from when they purchased the house or they refinanced the house or they did an addition to the house. There would be a lot of different reasons for them to have a survey. The square footage is a little bit more complicated unless you're willing to learn how to measure a home. It's really not that hard. You're going to measure the perimeter of the house, and then you'd have to calculate the areas under air. Um, but I've seen many cases where you have the county's reflecting a 1,300 square foot home, and the home is 2,000 square feet. You know, you should be able to identify, if you're in this profession, the difference between 1,300 square foot of living area and 2,000 square feet of living area. Not necessarily the exact amount, but that you should be able to know that there is, that it is not accurate. The reason I say that is because depending on the municipality that you're in, you may have to verify whether that's permitted or not. Some municipalities will require a what's called service recertificate. No, highly, what is it?
I mean, reactive.
Reoccupancy certificate. Right. So anytime that the property sells, you will have the county come in and they will verify what's there, that what there was done with permits and stuff like that. You're an agent, you want to make sure that you're ready to cross those hurdles, that those things can tie up a sale of a home for a significant amount of time. If you're going to be an agent, you're going to take that on. You want to make sure that you're being compensated for that. And it's in line with what you're going to do in terms of your commitment to the sale of the property and everything that it takes to get a property sold. Um, right. And then the last thing that I want to talk about with regards to the appraisal is bracketing adjustments. Okay. So adjustments are things that we make for properties that are different than ours when we're choosing comps, right? So like for instance, this house that we looked at that was 1.1 was on the lake, right? We would have to adjust to, if we use this property as a comp, that 1.1 million, we would have to adjust for that lake versus our canal. Okay. In this situation, we have a perfect example where the 7,400 Sable Drive sold on a canal and the 1.1 leading property on Leading Pine sold on a lake. There's other differences other than the lake. There's differences in condition, there's differences in lot size between the two, and there's differences in living area between the two. So we would have to extract all of those adjustments separately before we could figure out like how much is the lake realistically worth. Based on my experience, the lake here is worth about 60 to $70,000. We would have to go through several long steps to figure out what the adjustments are for everything else. But the reason I'm talking about what I want to bring up in regards to bracketing adjustments would be we would not be able, if I was appraising for a bank, I would not be able to use three sales that are all superior with regards to their view and adjust those sales down. So I would have to give them a mix of some comps that are superior in view, some comps that are maybe the same or inferior in view, and bracket that adjustment, meaning that some of the sales will be adjusted and some won't. They don't want you to adjust, you know, three sales all in the same direction. In other words, if you have a house that you're listing with a pool, or sorry, without a pool, in a neighborhood that most of the homes have pools. Okay, you're gonna want to find a comp that doesn't have a pool, at least one. The appraiser is gonna find that. He needs to find that for the bank. So giving all sales with pools to an appraiser will not necessarily justify what what you're trying to do with regards to the comps that you're providing. And that goes for every feature for the house that you're going to adjust. So if your house is 2,000 square feet, you want to get some houses that are a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger. If your house or all the same would be ideal. If you're in one of these communities that, they only have four or five, a lot of the new construction, they only have four or five models. So you'll just use the same model. But you do want to bracket things like condition and size and the bed bath count and the lot size. All those are all things that we would want to bracket um with regards to the adjustments. Okay. So that's kind of like a quick synopsis of like what I do with regards to a comp search. At this time I would be interested in, breaking down any issues or questions that you guys might have with some of the appraisals that you guys are dealing with. Or if you want to elaborate on some of the things that I went over, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Do you have like an average on like kitchen pricing difference, like an original kitchen compared to remodeled? I guess it all depends on where you're looking at, right?
It depends on what you're looking at. It depends on the price point of the home. Typically, what we look for is like the situation, right? If I have a home that's been fully remodeled and is turnkey versus a property that's been halfway done, I would look for a couple halfway done comps, um, and a couple fully remodeled comps and get an average of what the difference is between those two situations. It doesn't necessarily mean the kitchen because maybe the other house didn't do the kitchens and they did the bathrooms, or maybe they did the roof, or they did like different things, you know?
Yeah.
Some cases, I would make the adjustment specifically for the updates to like kitchen and baths, but the majority of the time, we would rank the condition rating of a home that has some updates. We would rank it lower than a home that has been completely renovated, and then the adjustment would just be for the overall condition.
Got it. Got it.
You know,
Okay.
line item adjustments that are kind of not standard, but tend to be like a pool, in a five to 600, $700,000 house, we're probably making an adjustment for like 30,000. If it's in like $1 million property, we're making it like a 50, 60,000.
Yeah.
I want to let you know that you cannot build a pool on $1 million home for 50 grand in most cases, and you can't build a pool in a $600,000 house for 30K.
Yeah.
But all of our adjustments are typically going to be less than what it costs to build new. You're also not getting a brand new
Yeah.
pool or kitchen the way that
So
you
we say like an
design.
average of 20% less or whatever you.
20 to 30% less would be an accurate adjustment amount. Yeah. You know,
All right. Any questions, guys, overall?
No, everything was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Vanessa, Karen, nothing?
No, gracias. Sorry que al principio entré corriendo, pero
Okay, perfect, guys.
pero gracias.
Um, all right, if there's no other questions, then I think we're all set. No, you're good?
we're all set.
All right, perfect. All right, guys, thank you.
Thank you.